And here we see the 28 starters assembled on the dummy grid for this, the 9th round in this year's World Championship contest. 67 laps of the 2.9-mile circuit, 196.11 miles to the checkered flag. And as a result of some sensational periods of practice, the grid will form up in the order you see on your screen now. Now, as we look down from the Goodyear Europa airship, way down there, 800 feet below, the car's still on the dummy grid, because this year, for the first time, they're going to do a whole lap between the dummy grid and the actual start. On the 3rd rank down there, the 3rd of the McLarens, young Jody Scheckter from South Africa, 116.9. Alongside him, Francois Sever with the 2nd of the Tyrrells, and alongside him on the outside, Carlos Reutemann with the quickest of the Brabham BT42s. Here they go now on what is virtually a formal warming up lap. The car still maintaining formation. There you see him through Copse and going down towards Maggots. There you see the recognizable blue helmet of Ronnie Peterson. Denny Hulme in the center, Jackie Stewart fidgeting about a bit, Francois Sever. Extraordinary sight that, as we look at the field of 28 coming down Hanger Straight towards Stoke Corner. Next time you see him coming down there, they'll be doing 180 miles an hour. So the McLarens then extremely well placed, with Denny Hulme and Pete Revson on the front rank and Jody Scheckter on the 3rd rank. And then come the BRMs on the 4th rank. Nicky Lauder's time 117.4, Clay Regazzoni's 117.5. On the 5th rank, James Hunt with Lord Hesketh's March 731G. A very creditable effort indeed by this young driver, who's really making a mark for himself, 117.6 as I said. And that is 0.4 of a second quicker than Mike Halewood's Surtees. And alongside Halewood is Wilson Fittipaldi, Emerson's elder brother, in the Brabham BT42, 118.1 against his teammate Carlos Reutemann, 117.4. Right, the car's now coming up onto the grid, and they'll only be held there for seconds before the flag falls and the start of the race. On the front rank on the inside, Peterson then with the 2 McLarens of Hulme and Revson flanking him. Jackie Stewart and Emerson Fittipaldi on the 2nd rank. It's going to be a blinding start. "67 laps to go, 196 miles, and vital points in the championship at stake." The flag's up. Jackie Stewart going through on the inside behind Ronnie Peterson. Jackie Stewart made a blinding start. It's still Peterson on the inside, just holding Stewart out as they go through Copse for the first time. The field then through Copse, a clean start all the way except one of the BRMs. And here's Peterson cutting through, holding off Jackie Stewart. You see the blue and white BRMs. And there's Jackie Stewart taking the lead, going past Ronnie Peterson as they go into Beckett's. So Jackie Stewart's Tyrrell takes the lead from Ronnie Peterson's JPS on the first lap. Brilliant start. Jackie Stewart number 5 with the Tyrrell ahead of Ronnie Peterson with the JPS number 2, and then Carlos Reutemann right up there with the Brabham BT42, and then it's Denny Hulme and Pete Revson. So the 2 McLarens have dropped back a bit. There's Stewart, Peterson, Reutemann and the 2 McLarens. Great stuff this from young Carlos Reutemann from the Argentine, but Jackie Stewart pulling away now as they go through Club Corner at about 115 miles an hour on the first of the 67 laps. It's Jackie Stewart, Ronnie Peterson, Carlos Reutemann, Denny Hulme and Pete Revson as they come up towards Woodcote Corner now, accelerating 180, braking to go through at about 160, and Jackie with a big slide on. Jackie Stewart, Ronnie Peterson, Carlos Reutemann, Jody Scheckter ahead of Denny Hulme, and then Francois Sever, and Jody Schechter's lost it. Jody Scheckter has been hit. A multiple shunt at the end of the first lap. Jody Scheckter with the McLaren lost it coming out of Woodcote at 160 miles an hour, got all across the road, and there, what a shambles. There's Jean-Pierre Beltoire's car number 20, Jochen Maas, car number 31, and that's one of the Surtees, either Harewood or Carlos Pache. But there's the car that all started it, number 30, young Jody Scheckter from South Africa, who was wheel-to-wheel with Denny Hulme in 5th position, indeed, when they went through. What a terrible scene, what a terrible start to the race. But the marshals very well in control of the situation, no sign of any fire. That McLaren took a terrible bash, and it was the most unfortunate part about it was that the car was stationary and had been there for some time. And are they stopping the race? Here comes Jackie Stewart, terribly fast, and Ronnie Peterson coming up terribly fast. Why aren't the red flags out earlier? Well, the red flags are out here. It'll be all right now. Jackie Eakes coming up, but those red flags should really have got out a bit sooner than that. They've only got a yellow out on the entrance to Woodcote, and it should be a red. The race stopped as they came round for the second time. Very difficult decision to have to make, but I'm sure the right one. 19 cars on the depleted grid, still the full distance, 67 laps, 196.1 miles to the checkered flag. On the front rank, of course, Ronnie Peterson, Denny Hulme and Pete Revson as before. Behind them, Jackie Stewart and Emerson Fittipaldi, and then behind them, Sever and Carlos Reutemann, and then the two BRMs, Niki Lauda and Regazzoni, because Lauda's has been repaired, and the rest strung out with those very sad gaps on the grid. They are moving up now to the pucker grid off the dummy grid. Now, is Ronnie Peterson going to get passed by Jackie Stewart as he was this time? He's going to be really watching. Stewart being beaten by Niki Lauda's BRM. Niki Lauda's BRM slicing through to tackle Ronnie Peterson, and it's number 21, Niki Lauda's BRM, tucking in behind Ronnie Peterson as they go past Copse, and Jackie Stewart did not make such a blinding start that time. Okay, now he's really got to fight back. Here they are at Maggots. It's Ronnie Peterson, Lauda and Jackie Stewart about 6, because Francois Seve is up there. And there we see Ronnie Peterson ahead of Niki Lauda and Francois Seve. So it's JPS, BRM and Tyrrell as they go through Chapel Curve now, down towards Stowe for the first time. A clean start, everyone away, but it's still Ronnie Peterson holding the lead. Niki Lauda ahead of Jackie Stewart, who's in third place, and Emerson Fittipaldi is in fourth. Then comes the rest of the BRM. Still Ronnie Peterson holding off Niki Lauda. And out of Stowe and up to Club on the first of the 67 laps. There they are going through Club and coming up to the completion of the first lap, and that's where the trouble was last time, swinging over to come through Abbey Curve, accelerating up to 180 miles an hour to come round through Woodcote at 150, and it's still Ronnie Peterson in the JPS in the lead, Niki Lauda in second place, Jackie Stewart third, Emerson Fittipaldi fourth, and then Denny Hulme and Pete Revson, and then Francois Seve. And still it's the JPS holding off the BRM. Ronnie Peterson with JPS number 2 ahead of Niki Lauda, Marlborough BRM number 21, and Lauda is still holding off Jackie Stewart and Emerson Fittipaldi, and then the two McLarens of Denny Hulme and Pete Revson. There's Wilson Fittipaldi going through in his Brabham, which has been repaired well enough to run, and now we see that Ronnie Peterson on the second lap is pulling out a bit of a lead, and Niki Lauda is still in front of Jackie Stewart. Jackie Stewart won't be liking this as they go down Hanger Straight at 180 miles an hour on the second lap of the 67. It's still Ronnie Peterson, the winner of the French Grand Prix, and Jackie Stewart's got past Lauda. Jackie Stewart now in second place on the second lap. So once again, it's the battle between the JPS and the Tyrrell, with the BRM third, and Emerson Fittipaldi in the second of the JPS is fourth, and the two McLarens well up, Denny Hulme and Pete Revson. So the battle between the 5 significant cars, all of whom missed the shunt, is now being joined, but still with the eloping presence of Niki Lauda. It's Ronnie Peterson, Jackie Stewart, Niki Lauda, Emerson Fittipaldi, Denny Hulme, Pete Revson, Francois Seve, and then James Hunt. James Hunt up with the march, but Ronnie Peterson's really trying as he goes through Copse at 110, and Jackie Stewart isn't making much impression. Ronnie Peterson with the JPS is holding off the Tyrrell in the early stages of this extraordinary race, not in the least bit flustered by the sensational accident and the nervous strain of restarting. Jackie Stewart, I think, perhaps a little surprised to see that Peterson so far ahead. The time for the first lap from the standing start, 1:26.4. For the second lap, 1:20 against the 1:16.3 of Peterson, number 2 there in practice, 1.2 seconds faster than lap record. There's the first 5 cars still in the same order. It's still Ronnie Peterson ahead of Jackie Stewart, then Niki Lauda, then the 2 McLarens, and then Francois Sebe. And as they come up through Abbey, here's Ronnie Peterson, number 2, Jackie Stewart, number 5. The JPS leading the Tyrrell, and the pair of them ahead of Niki Lauda in BRM 21, who's ahead of Emerson Fittipaldi, number 1. And then Denny Hulme 7, Pete Revson 8, Francois Sever 6, and James Hunt right up on Sever's tail with the privately entered march of Lord Hesketh. Boy, that lad really is flying. He was a bit involved in the accident. They changed the airbox, but he's still going and going well. Ronnie Peterson and Jackie Stewart now really settling down to what's still 180 odd miles of neck-and-neck racing. There's no quarter given or expected in this quartet at the front here. It's still Ronnie Peterson holding off Jackie Stewart. Then you see the gap before you see the red and white BRM of Niki Lauda going through just ahead of the other black JPS of Emerson Fittipaldi. There you can see the gap is opening up to about 2 seconds, I would think. And Jackie Stewart, although he was closing on Ronnie Peterson, is now just about holding station. There they come through Club. And there you see the JPS number 2, Ronnie Peterson, in control of the situation and coming up to the completion of the 6th lap. Ronnie Peterson ahead of Jackie Stewart, and then Niki Lauda, Emerson Fittipaldi, Denny Hulme, Pete Revson, Francois Sebe, James Hunt, and then a long gap before Carlos Reutemann, Clay Regazzoni and Jackie Hicks go through, and then Howden Ganley in that second group. And it seems there's the duel between the BRM and the JPS, and here's the duel between the JPS and the Tyrrell. And Jackie Stewart was really closing on Ronnie Peterson at Beckett's there and got into a bit too much of a slide for comfort, but he's closing a little now. As we look down from the airship, we see that the Tyrrell, in fact, has it on the fastest section of the course. He's closing right up. Jackie Stewart overtaking on the inside and very nearly losing it. Right through the markers on the inside, and Stewart, he's still sliding and he's still in trouble. He was in 120-mile-an-hour skid there, and now he's really in the agricultural business. Ploughing out of the wheat field on the inside of Stowe Corner, halfway through the 6th lap. Jackie Stewart trying desperately hard to get past Ronnie Peterson and losing the Tyrrell in a pretty big way. However, back on the road now, but look what he's got to overcome. He's about halfway down the 3-year-old. Meantime, here's Ronnie Peterson now with a clear lead of 6 seconds, I should think, on Fittipaldi, who's second, Lauda third, then Denny Hulme, and then Pete Revson. Now we're looking out for Jackie Stewart in this field. There he is now. There's Jackie Stewart going through the picture now, immediately behind Wilson Fittipaldi in 13th position on the lap chart. So he's well done. There were 19 starters and there's one out, but here's Ronnie Peterson in the lead on the 9th lap now of the 67, ahead of Emerson Fittipaldi, then Pete Revson, and then Denny Hulme. So the two McLarens handily placed. And Nicky Lauder's early challenge with the BRM now under a good deal more pressure. And there we are at Copse. And there's Jackie Stewart going through Copse on the 9th lap in 10th position and closing up. My goodness, that's Francois Sever on the second of the Tourals, of course, Toural number 6. And Sever, in fact, is in 7th position, behind James Hunt, who's just passed him. Here's the grouping behind the leader, Peterson having gone through. There's Fittipaldi with the McLaren of Revson on his tail. There's Denny Hulme's McLaren, and then Nicky Lauda. So the two McLarens have fallen back behind, the BRM has fallen back behind the two McLarens, and Ronnie Peterson has a lead of 6 seconds now, which is pretty substantial as they come up towards the completion of the 10th lap. So Emerson, there's the leader, Ronnie Peterson, ahead of his teammate Emerson Fittipaldi by 6 seconds, and there's the 10th lap now. It's still Ronnie Peterson in the lead, JPS number 2 from Emerson Fittipaldi, JPS number 1. Third is Pete Revson, McLaren number 8. Fourth is Denny Hulme, McLaren number 7. Then number 27, the Lord Hesketh privately entered March of James Hunt in the drive of his life, ahead of Francois Seve, Jackie Stewart's teammate, of course, and then Carlos Reutemann from the Argentine in the Brabham BT42 is in 7th position. That's the leading group, but Ronnie Peterson's out on his own and really flying. Fine opportunity to study Ronnie Peterson at close quarters. He had the reputation of being a bit hairy. Here's Emerson Fittipaldi with Revson closing on him now. And there's Denny Hulme going with Jackie Stewart. So Jackie Stewart's in with the leading bunch, but he's got some real flyers to get past if he's going to start closing up the lap, which he is done. There goes Emerson Fittipaldi in 2nd place, Revson 3rd, Denny Hulme 4th, Jackie Stewart going past Denny Hulme, Denny letting him through. And now James Hunt is closed right up there on Denny Hulme, the march right in the McLaren slipstream in that last shot. And there's the leader coming down into Hanger Straight on the approach to Stowe again on his 15th lap of the 67. Braking from about 180 to 120 to go through the long right-hander at Stowe. I was saying he used to have the reputation of being a thought hairy, but there's nothing hairy about his approach to club here, which he goes through at about 115. Right-hander again, drifting beautifully controlled all the way out. Now maximum acceleration to sweep through Abbey there at 140 plus. Speed still building up towards 180, and then the lift and the chop before sweeping through Woodcote at 150 plus. The long right-hander leading to the pit straight. There he goes. The lateral G on those huge tires, something absolutely remarkable. These cars are going through Woodcote faster than the Grand Prix cars which first raced here after the war did down the straight, a lot faster. And a great drive by Revson here. But here again, the American member of the Yardley McLaren team, also very much on form and on song. In fact, all these leading contenders are really doing pretty well at this time. Jackie Stewart actually leading the World Championship by a single point from Emerson Fittipaldi, 42 to 41. James Hunt won the Tour last week, which must have cheered him up a good deal, and that was a combination of circuit racing and rallying, of course. So this young man's really proving his versatility. And there you see the little short wheelbase, March 731G of Hesketh Racing, immaculately prepared. The fact that it's got a yellow airbox was a result of the multiple shunt and all the car lost was its airbox, and it looks very much to me as if that box was borrowed from Mike Bertler on the Stock Exchange Special March. So here we see how James Hunt is right on the tail of Denny Hulme and really holding his own, and the pair of them are in 4th and 5th positions, and the gap incidentally between Ronnie Peterson here in 1st position in JPS number 2 and Emerson Fittipaldi in 2nd position in JPS number 1, 4 seconds and a bit. And there are still 47 laps to go on the 2.9-mile circuit. Here's Jackie Stewart now in Tyrrell number 5, who again has gained a couple of positions since we last saw him. He's now 14th, but a full lap behind the leaders. And here's Emerson Fittipaldi going past Graham Hill very fast at Beckett's. Graham still not happy with the Embassy Shadows, still a lot of development work to be done on it. We saw it in at the pits earlier in the race. And there's Peterson, and there's Fittipaldi, and there's Revson, and it's closing up a bit. And Jackie Stewart going through there on Revson's tail is acting to us as a spur to those chaps ahead of him, who are, of course, giving him a tow in this impossible task of gaining a whole lap on them. Certainly he won't do that unless something pretty disastrous happens to the JPSs of Peterson and Fittipaldi. And still the slight threat of rain under these low grey clouds has not materialized, which certainly is just as well. And here you the position after 21 laps of the 67, and the gap between 1st and 2nd, Peterson and Fittipaldi, 4 seconds, and the gap between Fittipaldi and Revson not much more than 4 yards. And there you see the gap between Emerson Fittipaldi and Pete Revson. The JPS in 2nd position, the Yardley McLaren M23 3rd. There's the gap between the leader on the right of the picture and 2nd man there, Ronnie Peterson and Emerson Fittipaldi on the 2 JPSs. And just look at that crowd. Meantime, Nicky Lauda's come into the pits. He it was, you remember, who was in 2nd position. Let's find out from Barry Gill what happened to him.
And yet another tyre change. Nicky Lauda has just streaked into the pits, and this offside wheel was just shredded. Denny Hulme told us yesterday that this race could be decided on tyres. This tyre just hasn't stood up to the pace, and now the mechanics wrestling with the wheel and wrestling with the second. They're trying to put the young Austrian, the 2nd youngest driver in the race, back in the battle. That tyre didn't fit, so now they'd find another one. We haven't seen anything like this for a long time. That really was bad luck, but this man had drive shaft problems. Now he seems to have all sorts of problems, and they're battling and battling to find the right sort of wheel, the right combination. And this mechanic must be the unhappiest man at Silverstone at the moment.
And it was Nicky Lauda who was 2nd on the 1st lap and then held 3rd position for the first 6 laps, and now of course he's dropped right down to 12th and is losing ground all the time to the Flying Peterson. Meantime, Jackie Stewart has still not gained another place. He's still 14th, a clear lap behind the leaders. Ronnie Peterson now leading by 3 seconds and a bit on the JPS Lader 72 from his teammate Emerson Fittipaldi. Hello, here's Graham Hill in trouble again. Out on the circuit, and it looks like a dead engine, and another cruel disappointment for Graham Hill. And one knows how hard he's worked. He looks as if he's been doing a bit of agricultural mating at the front end there, perhaps. But no sign of fire, but Graham Hill almost certainly out of the race on the 26th lap. Well, now the gap between Ronnie Peterson and Emerson Fittipaldi, JPS is 2 and 1 respectively, is less than 3, 2.7 seconds. So Emerson is whittling it away. And there's Mike Bertler's march going through the picture. We hadn't seen that for some time, and here's Ronnie Peterson coming down to lap it. Now this is really getting interesting. 28 laps completed, and the gap between Emerson Fittipaldi, JPS number 1, and Ronnie Peterson ahead of him closing, and Pete Revson right on Fittipaldi's tail and holding. Jackie Stewart holding helplessly. Denny Hulme going through there with James Hunt still formating on him, and that group is really pulling away from the rest of the field. The next man up is still François Sebe, who is in 6th position, then Carlos Reutemann 7th, Clay Regazzoni 8th, Jackie X 9th, and 10th is Wilson Fittipaldi. Wilson, Emerson's older brother, of course. There's the leading group. Those first 5 cars with Jackie Stewart in tow, still very much of a bunch. Now, Ronnie Peterson's coming down to lap Mike Birtler here. Mike Birtler with the Stock Exchange Special, March 731. A whole lap behind James Hunt with a similar car. Peterson indicating to Birtler to get over. Ooh, and he didn't. He shut the door on him. Now this is holding Peterson up minutely, and he's not going to like it as they... he's through this time. Now Fittipaldi's got to have that problem ahead of him, and Revson right on his tail. That might just give Revson the opportunity to close the gap, or perhaps even get past Emerson into 2nd place. It'll be certainly worth watching. And there's Emerson Fittipaldi and Revson now, 2nd and 3rd, coming up to lap Mike Birtler. They might just get him on the braking going down into Copse. There's Peterson going down through Copse, Fittipaldi going through on the inside, Birtler closing the door again. Not proving easy to get past on this 2.9-mile circuit. There he is, the yellow march ahead of the black JPS, and the lead is down to 2 seconds now, so that cost Ronnie Peterson a full second. And at Beckett's, Birtler is still holding off Emerson Fittipaldi with the JPS and Pete Revson with the McLaren. Let's see what happens on the Hangar Straight, where the JPS should be quicker than the March and is, and Emerson said a little something to Mike Birtler as he pulled over. And there's Fittipaldi and Revson right on his tail in 2nd and 3rd positions, and then Jackie Stewart coming through on the Tyrrell number 5, but still in 13th position. He has in fact gained a place. Over on the inside of the circuit going slowly is Graham Hill limping back to the pits. Now Revson definitely pushing Emerson Fittipaldi there. Car number 8, the Yardley McLaren of the American Pete Revson in 3rd position, now challenging for 2nd. And Emerson Fittipaldi also beginning to challenge for the lead. Less than 2 seconds between them now. The gap between the first 3 closing up as the race comes up only to the half distance. 30 laps completed of the 67. Jackie Stewart significantly not able to make any impression on the cars immediately ahead of him. And as if we hadn't had enough drama today, it is now beginning to rain, as you can see. And there's Emerson Fittipaldi out of the race in 2nd place. What a time to join this sensational race. Out of the original 28 starters, only 19 took the grid on the restart. And now here's Emerson Fittipaldi out of the race in 2nd place. Now we can pick it up on the road. There's Ronnie Peterson coming down with Pete Revson now in 2nd place on the McLaren. So it's the JPS in the lead, and then the 2 McLarens of Pete Revson and Denny Hulme in 2nd and 3rd place, and James Hunt has moved up to 4th. Number 21 here is Nicky Lauder's Marlboro BRM, which was 2nd indeed on the first lap and then held 3rd place, but has been having a very unhappy time of it, mostly on tyres, and is now pretty much out of the race. But now, with Ronnie Peterson on his own now, with his teammate Emerson Fittipaldi out of the race, we now really turn on the drama in a big way, because it means that Peterson is on his own with the JPS, where he's got the two McLarens right on his tail, and Revson and Denny Hulme are in excellent form. The team is happy in its work, and they are a very, very real threat to the Swede. There you can see what the gap is between Ronnie Peterson, JPS number 2 there, and Pete Revson in Yardley McLaren number 8, and he's closing up a lot at Beckett's. He's definitely challenging now as they go through Chapel Curve there and down onto Hanger Street, building up the speed to 180 miles an hour. You see how Revson and the McLaren has closed right up so that he's invisible. He was slipstreaming. Now he's going to try for the inside at Stowe, and he takes the lead. Pete Revson takes the lead on the 39th of the 67 laps, and so now it's McLaren, JPS led to 72, McLaren. Pete Revson in the lead, Ronnie Peterson second, Denny Hulme third, and James Hunt with the Heskett Racing March is fourth. And a lot of drama in the pits, where Barry Gill is maintaining his watching brief for us.
Well, the pits always tell their own sort of inside drama, and today's been no exception. There have been 4 major happenings. First, Jackie Stewart arriving with his brake lights and his nose covered in grass, the spin that could cost him the championship. Then we've had tyre changes, and now, most remarkably of all, we can feel spots of rain. But above all, the signposts now are the faces of the people in the Lotus pit. Because something has happened to Ronnie Peterson, something has happened to Phil Goldie's gearbox, and we expect some very important visitors in the pits indeed. But everybody could be coming to see us, because it's now starting to rain. I'm feeling now, and it may be that every single driver in the race will have to come in to make a dramatic tyre change, and that could change everything.
So 39 laps completed, and Pete Revson just in the lead from Ronnie Peterson. Third, James Hunt. Fourth, Denny Hulme, because James Hunt has just got past Denny Hulme on the Hesketh Racing March. Fifth is Francois Servet on the Tyrrell. Sixth is Carlos Reutemann on the Brabham. Seventh is Clay Regazzoni. Eighth is Jackie Ickx. And ninth is Howden Ganley on the Ise Marlborough. But meantime, here's the leader now, Pete Revson, and in the commentary box I've been joined by Graham Hill, who's been having a hell of a day of it. I won't say that he might be quite pleased to be out of it. As usual, every commiseration, Graham. We're sorry you're up here in one sense, but delighted in another. How do you think the race is shaping up right now?
Well, I must say, it's a very interesting turn of events. When they flashed past me just now, Ronnie had quite a good lead, but I see Revson's come from nowhere, and so has Hunt. And Stewart's dropped out. Well, I think it's an extraordinary change of events, but it looks to be a very exciting race from here.
With great respect, because you've been busier than I have in the cockpit, and I've been watching. Revson hasn't come from anywhere. He's led Denny Hulme throughout, and they've been right in touch throughout the race. The McLarens have had a real pressure situation on the JPSs, even when they were both running. But what do you think of the drive of James Hunt? I've been saying that this is obviously the drive of his life, in third position behind Pete Revson, but now ahead of Denny Hulme.
Yeah, that's a fantastic performance. As I said just now, they came by me. He was quite a long way behind, but he's obviously caught them up now. And I noticed that he's on a different set of tyres from the two fellas in front. You've got Goodyear's in front, the first two cars. He's on Firestone, so he's heading the Firestone group.
And there they go through now. Pete Revson's McLaren, Ronnie Peterson's JPS, and James Hunt's March. There it is. Third in the British Grand Prix, with 3/4 of the distance almost completed. 41 laps completed now of the 67. 26 laps to go. They're on their 42nd lap, as the caption shows, and there you see the leading three. Not a whisker between them. Real close quarter stuff. After 42 laps on the 2.9-mile circuit, 120 miles of racing behind them, and there's a pocket handkerchief covers the lot, and absolutely no room for error amongst any one of those three. Would you
Not a
agree?
moment, no. I mean, you've only got to miss a gear change. Just snatch the gear and don't quite get it, and the other fellow will be past, especially being so close as that. But there is one other snag, of course. Following so close to another car, it upsets your aerodynamics, and you don't get quite the same sort of download from the wing. So the two fellas behind are having a really tricky time.
And James Hunt's performance with the Hesketh Racing March, a private entry against two of the most efficient works cars running, makes his performance in third position even more impressive.
Fantastic, yes, it really is a most remarkable performance, and of course must be extremely heartening for March and the Firestanders and for his team, Hesketh Racing.
And there we see him now with the airbox borrowed from Mike Bertler and half the number blown away, but that's the very least of his worries. Very short wheelbase on that car, Graham, make it a little more difficult to handle, particularly if it's...
Possibly, yes, it's pretty narrow, you see. You look at it, it's just a little bit narrow on the Lotus, which gives it a much cleaner line going down the straight. So he might be a little bit quicker down the straight, but having such a narrow track, the wheels so close together, makes the handling just a little bit more difficult. You know, it slides a little easier.
Well, there's no question that he's holding Ronnie Peterson, no question at all, but I fancy that Pete Revson is drawing away fractionally from them. Now, Graham, while we're looking down on this trio, and we can still see it, Revson just going out of frame on the right, Ronnie Peterson in the centre there, and James Hunt, and then Denny Hulme just coming into the picture. Tell us quickly what happened to you.
Oh, well, initially I got involved in that shunt and I got hit up the back and knocked a wheel off. Anyway, I staggered round the pits and got another wishbone fitted and got the whole car all assembled nicely and managed to start again. And then I had a puncture and I came into the pits, fixed that, and then I went out again, and then the steering rack fell off and I had no steering.
My goodness.
Apart from that, I had quite a nice time.
I was wondering how you're going to follow that. There's the close-up of Revson's leading McLaren. Number 8 in the lead then, ahead of Ronnie Peterson in JPS Lotus number 2. And then James Hunt, number 27 of the March. And then Denny Hulme, number 7 with the second of the McLarens. And then Francois Seber in Tyrrell number 6. The leader through Maggots, and the lead is now down to 2 seconds by our stopwatches. So Revson in the lead is only 2 seconds ahead of Peterson, and Denny Hulme is less than that astern of Peterson on the 61st lap with 6 laps to go. This is going to be a right roaring finish.
Yes,
Revson decidedly under pressure. We've had the watch on him. He's lapping at 1:19.5, a clear 3 seconds slower than Peterson's fastest practice lap. Give you an idea of the conditions, and again casts tribute on James Hunt's impeccable performance in 4th position behind this leading trio. There he is, James Hunt on Lord Hesketh's privately entered Mark 731. The drive of his life. At Cobbs, for the 61st time of the 67, Pete Revson, number 8, Yardley McLaren, they're using every inch of road, so is Ronnie Peterson and so is Denny Hulme, but Revson was running wider, and this really is closing up now. A pocket handkerchief covering the lot. Now really concentrating on their pit signals, which tell them exactly what the position is. Jackie Stewart out of really great race here. A lap and a half behind in 10th position, and a tremendous battle involving 4 cars at the finish of a Grand Prix. And really any one of these 4 could win, with the odds, I suppose, against James Hunt on the grounds of inexperience. Do you agree?
Yes, well, of course, you've got... the champion of the front's got the best chance, but he's got the most pressure. And then he goes down the scale. The fellow who hasn't got, out of that 4, has got even less pressure than a lot of them, of course, is Hunt. But the moment you've got someone behind you, you can't be too careless. You know, you can try and make a really desperate effort to overtake the bloke in front. But, of course, if you make a nonsense of it, the fellow behind you is going to snap it.
Still no change in the order behind them. Sevier, followed by Reutemann, followed by Clay Riccardzoni, followed by Ix, who is 8th. According to our stopwatches, Revson's time on lap 62, 1:19, so he's got a half second off and he's really under pressure. 63 laps completed, 4 to go, and it's Pete Revson with Yardley McLaren number 8 in the lead by less than 2 seconds from Ronnie Peterson's JPS Lotus 72 number 2. Third is Denny Halm in the second of the McLarens, number 7. Fourth is James Hunt in the drive of his life on the Hesketh Racing March. Fifth is Francois Sever. Sixth is Carlos Reutemann. Seventh is Clay Regazzoni. And eighth is Jackie X. Jackie Stewart is 10th, having fallen right back and lost more than a lap as a result of a bit of agricultural motoring while challenging Ronnie Peterson for the lead. There's Peterson going through now, and we're right in touch with the leading group. Revson just out of the frame. There's Peterson in second place, and as I told you, Revson in the lead, Peterson in second place, Denny Halm in third place, and James Hunt fourth. And there's James Hunt in the March number 27, Pete Revson in the leading McLaren number 8, Ronnie Peterson number 2, the black JPS there with the blue helmet, then Denny Halm in the orange and white McLaren number 7. Here's the leader at Copse on his 65th lap now of the 67. The full race distance was 196 miles to the checkered flag, and we're looking down from the Goodyear Airship Europa at an altitude of about 1,000 feet on these sensational closing miles of what has been a sensational day's racing. Emerson Fittipaldi out of the race some while ago as a result of engine blow-up when he was backing up his teammate, and now this great duel between the two McLarens. Here we see Revson lapping Howden Ganley's ESO. Howden Ganley's ESO, in fact, is in 9th position, just ahead of Jackie Stewart, and they're being lapped. And Pete Revson looks as if he's on his way to his first ever Formula One Grand Prix victory, although he's scored immense success in the United States, of course. But this race is by no means over, and Ronnie Peterson still wants those 9 points. He won at the French Grand Prix, and he's stretching every nerve and sinew and every ounce of skill and concentration to close the gap. But and Revson's really getting a little bit ragged there, using every last inch of road coming out of Woodcote on the 65th lap with 2 to go. Here's Ronnie Peterson, number 2, just ahead of Denny Halm, number 7. There's 25, Howden Ganley, who, as I told you, has just been lapped. There's Ronnie Peterson with the JPS number 2, McLaren number 7, Denny Halm, and James Hunt with the March number 27. Meantime, number 8, Pete Revson on the leading McLaren. 65 laps completed, virtually a lap and a half to go now as he comes down to Stowe for the penultimate time. There's Nicky Lauda going through on the BRM. He's had an unhappy race, although he was going well earlier. But this is the real dice now between Halm and Peterson. There goes Revson through the frame. There's Peterson, there's Halm, there's Hunt. Now, can Denny Halm get past the JPS ahead of him? Vital points in the World Championship. This the 9th race in the series, and the score goes 9, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1, as you know, for finishing in that order. And coming up to the completion of the 66th lap of the 67. Here's Revson with Yardley McLaren number 8 in the lead, going through Woodcote onto his last lap. And there's Ronnie Peterson, JPS number 2, Denny Halm, McLaren number 7, and James Hunt, March 27. There they go. That's the leading group of 4 with 2.9 miles to go to the checkered flag now. There's Revson, there's Peterson, there's Halm, there's Hunt on their last lap of one of the finest British Grand Prix that I can remember. Certainly one of the most close races that there has been in the Formula One scene for a while. Down Hanger Straight for the last time now. There's Nicky Lauda, BRM number 21, who will hopefully get well out of the way because he's well out of the race as Revson comes down with less than 2 seconds in hand over Ronnie Peterson in pursuit. So you certainly can't afford to be balked for a split second. And if Peterson's going to do it, he's got really to close up now. And if Denny Halm's going to get past, the sands of time are running out. Pete Revson's on his way up towards the checkered flag now through Abbey for the last time. Coming up to 180 miles an hour just before Woodcote, coming through Woodcote for the last time, sweeping towards his first Grand Prix victory, and Pete Revson wins from Ronnie Peterson, who very nearly touches Denny Hulme, and James Hunt is just out of that. What a finish. Graham Hill, your comments on that?
Well, I must say that was a fantastic performance by Revson, and of course McLarens must be delighted to have two cars in the first three. Peterson held up a very strong challenge from Hulme in the closing stages, and as you saw as they crossed the line, Hulme there was no daylight between the two cars. And I think for race performance, I think James Hunt in fourth place must get the covered award. It was a fantastic performance by a newcomer in this sort of class of racing.
Peter Revson, congratulations, your first ever Grand Prix win. How does it feel?
Well, it feels great. I've been waiting a long time for this.
I remember you here at Silverstone in 1964. It must seem a long, long time ago.
It sure does, and since then my ambition was to win a Grand Prix, and I'm glad it could be the British Grand Prix.
How did you feel about this race, restarting after all the shambles at the beginning?
Well, I was pretty happy about it, because I got a pretty lousy start the first time around, and the second one wasn't too good either. So I got to learn how to jump the flag.
What has happened to the McLarens all of a sudden?
Well, we've had a good car right from the beginning, and of course we have good tires on Goodyear, we've got good cars and good engines, and we've had good cars from the beginning, but the design is only 3 months old, and it's taken 3 months to get it sorted out.
Well, there then, a sensational day's motor racing here at Silverstone. The multiple disaster mercifully ending in only one casualty. A superb race after a restart, and a magnificent victory for Pete Revson from the United States with his Yardley McLaren, from Ronnie Peterson from Sweden with the JPS Lotus 72. Third, Revson's teammate Denny Hulme with the McLaren. Fourth, James Hunt. Fifth, Francois Sever. And sixth, Carlos Reutemann.